Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. The migration crisis in the European Union is growing. This is the result of Brussels pushing an open-door policy, a concept created years ago by former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Her great advocate was Donald Tusk as head of the European Council at the time. The result of this policy was the entry of hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants into Europe. Donald Tusk agreed at the last EU summit to speed up implementation of the EU's migration pact. In the Netherlands, they don't want to hear about forced relocation, preferring to pay for each illegal migrant. This is a rich country that can afford it. What will the Polish government do?
The multi-party Dutch government has agreed to tighten its migration policy. The new strategy includes scrapping indefinite asylum permits, introducing border controls starting at the end of November, and creating additional detention facilities for people who have exhausted their appeals or are in the Netherlands illegally. Foreigners who are at the border and cannot stay here or have already applied for asylum in another country will be sent directly back to Germany and Belgium. As far as the Polish government is concerned, there are no such talks or conditions placed on Germany. The Dutch are tightening migration policy because that's what the people of Breda that we have met want as well.
Be sent back, and not in how do you call it, illegality, or they become illegal. So they should be sent back to their countries.
We don't, how do you say it in English? It's difficult to home visit all the people, to get jobs and locations and everything. I think so.
What do you think about deportation, illegal migrants?
It's okay.
And about deportations, the discussion in the Netherlands is open. The largest right-wing party forming the government proposes to recognize parts of Syria as safe regions, which would provide a way to send back illegal immigrants.
Komen ook extra cellen.
There will also be additional funds to deport denied asylum seekers and illegal migrants from our country. And that dreadful dispersal law that turns the Netherlands into a large center for asylum seekers will also be revoked. Those already in the Netherlands must expect that after 3 years, their residency permit will be reassessed, and they face deportation if they fail to meet the relevant conditions. On the one hand, the head of Dutch diplomacy, in response to our question, says the EU migration pact must be adopted, but he does not want to hear about forced relocation.
We see the same in the Netherlands and from the Netherlands. We want to address certain issues. One of the issues that is really of concern to the Netherlands is so-called secondary migration. So migrants that have arrived in, for example, Italy, Greece or Spain, later moving on, even though they've already been present in a safe country. This has always been dealt with via the Dublin mechanism in the past, which is not fully functioning, and we'd like to see something like this functioning again.
The Dutch can apparently afford to pay fines for not taking in illegal migrants. The question is, what about Poland?
Your part of the political spectrum in Poland keeps trying to convince Polish people that the migration pact envisages forced relocations, which is actually not true. It gives member states the option of either relocation or contributing to the relocation of those people somewhere else. And since Poland is a country which is the victim of Putin and Lukashenko's hybrid weaponized migration assault on the European border, we hope to stop that assault with the measures that I've just mentioned, and also with the physical barriers which are being strengthened now. But if some of it didn't work, we would actually be possibly in a position to benefit from the solidarity of other countries.
It's just that everything here is contractual. A lot depends on how the case is approached by the Germans, who are able to use EU regulations according to their interests. And as we can see on the Polish-German border, solidarity is not there with them, given that Poland has taken in millions of Ukrainian families fleeing the war. From Breda, Netherlands, Adrian Borecki, Republika.
According to the Central Election Commission, the ruling pro-Russian Georgian Dream Party won the parliamentary elections by winning 54% of the vote. The four pro-Western opposition groups can count on a combined total of about 37.5%. The Georgian opposition does not recognise the election results, and Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili is calling on the public for mass street protests and calling the whole thing a Russian special operation. Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili does not recognise the election results and calls them a Russian special operation. We have been not only witnesses but also victims of what can be described as a new form of hybrid war waged against our people and country. As the last independent institution in the country, I must clearly state that I do not recognise the outcome of these elections. Ordinary Georgians who began protesting en masse in the streets of Tbilisi this afternoon also disagree with such an outcome. The elections in Georgia were seen from the beginning as a choice between the West and Russia. Moscow repeatedly sent signals that it was counting on a victory for the Georgian Dream Party and accused Western countries of unlawful interference in Georgian politics. Georgia is to be spectacularly punished for even considering the possibility of joining the European Union or NATO. This was an election to decide Georgia's further direction towards the European Union. This is such a spectacular example of Putin succeeding, probably at a cost, as I foresee there could be bloody riot, to keep Georgia within his sphere of influence. The people of Tbilisi, who were hoping for an outcome favourable to integration with the West, are disappointed.
We're here to defend our country's European future because we've been fighting for our freedom and independence for the last, I don't remember, like decades. And I think that Georgian people, and especially young people, deserve to have a lot of opportunities, including to study abroad, to work, and etc. So we're here to say out loud that Georgia is a very European country, and our future is in EU, in the West.
Georgian president said, and other leaders of political parties said, and I agree with this position, that the election is totally rigged, and it's robbed from Georgian citizens, and by Russian dream. It is not Georgian dream in reality, and because of this reason we are here to protect our rights, our European perspective and equality and democracy.
Prime Minister Irakli Kobadhidze rejects all accusations of election rigging, and leaders of Georgia's opposition parties say that they will never accept the official election results and will protest to the end.
The elections yesterday were stolen by pro-Russian oligarch Bedzina Ivanishvili, and we, the Unity National Movement, are not going to accept these stolen election results.
None of the opposition parties should accept parliamentary seats, declared former President Mikhail Saakashvili, who is serving a prison sentence for abuse of power that he and his supporters consider politically motivated. Of course, no one from the opposition should enter Parliament. This is not the time to put our heads in ashes and worry about how we were cheated. Now is the time for big protests. We need to show the world that we are fighting for freedom, and we are a people who will not accept injustice. 3 independent international election monitoring organisations, including the OSCE, reported a series of violations, saying they may have affected the outcome. They did not explicitly label the elections as fraudulent.
Our European Parliament teams witnessed in some precincts high tension, confusion and chaos. In one case, ballot box stuffing, physical assault on observers attempting to report on violations, observer and media removal from polling stations, tearing up observers' complaints, intimidation of voters inside and outside of polling stations, presence of multiple party-affiliated observers posing as citizen observers. Furthermore, voting secrecy was not always assured.
United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken called for an investigation into violations during the elections. Going forward, we encourage Georgia's political leaders to respect the rule of law, repeal legislation that undermines fundamental freedoms, and address deficiencies in the electoral process together. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Tbilisi's relations with the West have deteriorated rapidly. Unlike many Western allies, Georgia has refused to impose sanctions on Moscow, and the rhetoric of the ruling Georgian Dream Party has become increasingly pro-Russian. Until now, Poles have mainly associated the migration threat with the eastern border. It turns out, however, that the real problem is elsewhere. Speaker of the Parliament, Szymon Hołownia, said that Germany wants to send more foreigners to Poland than have entered Poland from Belarus. This frank statement may and should worry the Polish people, but most of all the government, which should be taking action on this issue. While little is said on the topic, the problem is starting to get out of hand, and prospects for resolving the issue for now are lacking.
Pyrzyce, West Pomerania. During a meeting with constituents, the current Speaker of the Parliament heard a question from a concerned woman. You changed your mind and finally admitted that the eastern border was threatened. I'm very happy about that. But what about the western border? Why are there no border guards on our western border? Speaker Hołownia's answer may shed new light on the problem of migrants from across Poland's western border. You know, the number of migrants that the Germans actually want to bring us, that they are bringing in a very strange way, which we are protesting, is unfortunately greater than the number of migrants who have passed through our eastern border. The leader of the Poland 2050 party openly admitted that Germany wants to send more migrants to Poland than are crossing into Poland as part of the operation organized by Putin and Lukashenko on the Polish-Belarusian border. In doing so, Speaker Hołownia put his coalition partners on the spot and signaled that they are incapable of solving the problem with Poland's western neighbor. Szymon Hołownia, knowing that he's politically in a very difficult situation, as his presidential polls are already dire, decided to throw Donald Tusk under the bus by showing something that the whole coalition knew perfectly well, but refused to talk about. On the issue of migration, Germany serves its own interests. They are getting rid of illegal migrants en masse, dumping them on the Polish side of the border. At the same time, they are introducing border controls with neighboring countries. The Netherlands has just decided to take a similar step. By introducing unilateral border controls at their borders, they have triggered a kind of domino effect that we are witnessing right now. We're seeing decisions fall in the Netherlands, and we'll see how it plays out in France or other countries in the future. Introducing border controls on the border with Germany is one possible response from Poland. However, such a scenario is not being discussed in Warsaw at the moment. We asked the head of Polish diplomacy, Radosław Sikorski, what ideas the government has to solve this problem. His answer was evasive. Is the government planning to correct this problem in any way? This is a very good question for the ministry in charge, which is the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Administration. Following a meeting with his German counterpart in June, the head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Tomasz Siemoniak, announced the creation of a working group to resolve migrant disputes on an ongoing basis. After the announcement, however, news of the initiative quickly disappeared.
The US election is just 8 days away, and polls continue to show that this is the most evenly matched election race in recent American history. Donald Trump's rally, held yesterday at the Madison Square Garden Auditorium in New York City, reverberated widely, and there was no shortage of controversy in the process. Even before the event itself, Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz said that in the same place in 1939 there had been a convention of American Nazis. On the other hand, at the rally, comedian Tony Hinchcliffe insulted Puerto Ricans from the stage by calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, from which remark the Republican staff immediately distanced themselves.
The candidates are facing the final stretch of the US presidential election. Polls show Donald Trump leading, but the race is still very close. The votes of Poles in the United States will be decisive. How will they vote? I already voted for Trump because I believe in a safe America, and Trump meets all our criteria. So I'll vote for him for the second time. I came from Florida because I learned through you that the future president of the United States will pass through Mr. Trump.
Przyszły prezydent Stanów Zjednoczonych. Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump, okay. W tych swingujących stanach
polls are very numerous in the swing states. In some 7, 8, 9% of voters claim Polish heritage. So the Polish vote will probably determine who becomes the 47th president of the United States.
And welcome to the capital of the world. That's not me. That comes from Pope John Paul when he came to New York.
This is an obvious nod to the Polish people. Donald Trump, the Republican candidate for President of the United States, is well aware of the importance of their votes.
Well, I love the Polish people. As you know, I was in Warsaw and made a speech, and the relationship with Polish people has just been extraordinary, and I hope they get out and vote for me, because the other side does not like the Polish people. They don't like religion. They don't like anything.
Election day is Tuesday, the 5th of November. The Polish community may once again decide who will be the next president of the United States. This comes from analyses by foreign media such as Deutsche Welle, Germany's Deutsche Welle, which writes about the Polish diaspora's slight preference for Trump, as well as Politico, which notes that the Polish diaspora will vote for Trump despite the appeals of his opponent Kamala Harris, who has claimed that if Trump wins, Putin's next target would be Poland. All the polls say that the last 4 years have not been viewed well by Americans, especially economically, that is, also by Polish Americans living in America. It is no coincidence that for years Donald Trump has been catching up with Kamala Harris in the polls, and today, according to betting markets, he has a better chance of winning than Kamala Harris. This is exactly what Americans of Polish descent or Poles living in America who have the right to vote there seem to think. The member states of the European Union are closely watching the US elections because it is the President of the United States who sets the tone for cooperation with the member states of the European Union.
I will end inflation. I will stop the invasion of criminals coming into our country. And I will bring back the American dream. We need the American dream to come back home.
Donald Trump's presidency has brought tangible changes in favor of the Polish people. The abolition of visas for Polish citizens flying to the United States, everyone was talking about it, and it was the cooperation of President Trump and the Law and Justice government that lifted this need for visas. And it is the concrete benefits that appeal to Poles the most.
That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.